About the absolutely wild story of psilocybin, you know, the psychoactive compound in magic mushrooms. It's a story of incredible scientific promise, a complete and total shutdown, and now a powerful comeback that's literally reshaping modern medicine.
So, if you rewind to the mid 20th century, researchers were just fascinated by this stuff. They saw psilocybin as this brand new, maybe even revolutionary tool for psychotherapy. It really felt like the beginning of a whole new era in understanding the human mind.
But then, just 2 decades later, the brakes were slammed on, hard. Psilocybin was classified as a Schedule 1 substance, putting it in the exact same category as heroin, drugs with no currently accepted medical use. And just like that, all sanctioned research, it just stopped for almost 50 years.
And that really brings us to the big question, right? How on earth did a compound go from being a promising medicine to a public enemy and then all the way back again? Well, the story is way more complex and fascinating than you might think.
So let's start with where we are right now. Because today, psilocybin is at the very center of a scientific renaissance.
And that's not me being dramatic. That's what researchers are calling it. The study of psychedelics is being hailed as the new frontier in psychiatry. That signals a massive shift in how we're thinking about mental health care.
Pioneers like the late Roland Griffiths at Johns Hopkins were absolutely key to this revival. Griffiths was known for being so careful, so methodical with his work, producing research that his peers called, and I love this word, unimpeachable. That kind of rigorous approach was exactly what the field needed to get its credibility back after being in the dark for decades.
And the results? They're just incredibly promising. We're talking about clinical trials showing that psilocybin-assisted therapy can lead to major, sustained decreases in depression and anxiety. It's also showing real potential as a tool for treating addiction to things like alcohol and nicotine, and even helping with PTSD. Which, of course, brings us right back to that central mystery. If this stuff holds so much potential, what in the world happened to completely derail the science for half a century? Well, the answer lies at one of America's most famous universities. We have to go back to the early 1960s, to something called the Harvard Psilocybin Project. This is really the moment where everything, and I mean everything, changed. Okay, so you have these two rising academic stars, psychologists Timothy Leary and Richard Albert. They start a series of experiments to dig into what psilocybin does to the mind. They genuinely believed it could be a solution for some of the biggest emotional problems of the Western world. And at first, their work looked solid, with some pretty remarkable results. You had the Concord Prison Experiment, which looked at whether psilocybin could help stop inmates from reoffending. Then there was the Marsh Chapel Experiment, where divinity students reported having these incredibly profound religious experiences. An early study even found that 95% of participants said it changed their lives for the better. But this is exactly where their methods started to go off the rails. Leary and Albert, they blurred the line between researcher and subject, often taking psilocybin right alongside their participants. They became these public advocates for personal psychedelic use, and were even accused of pressuring students to join their studies. The whole thing blew up when Richard Albert was fired for giving psilocybin to an undergraduate. It is a completely different world from today's strict standards, which demands sober physicians, tight safety protocols, and a laser focus on objective data. Now, this controversy at Harvard, it didn't just stay on campus. Oh no, it exploded into a national issue, creating a moral panic that would have enormous consequences for science. And the collapse was just shockingly fast. I mean, in just a few years, the project went from being celebrated to being condemned. It was fueled by negative articles and internal pressure, and the scandal just kept escalating until Albert was fired, which kicked off a national media frenzy. So you had the Harvard affair mixing with the growing counterculture movement of the 1960s. Suddenly, psychedelics weren't seen as medicine anymore. They were symbols of rebellion. And that combination was absolutely toxic for the science, leading to that Schedule I classification and what we can call the Great Freeze, a 50-year shutdown on legitimate research. But to really, truly understand psilocybin's journey, we have to look way beyond the 20th century. I mean, let's pull the lens way, way back. Because this story didn't start at Harvard. It started long before humans were even around. Yeah, you're seeing that right. Recent genetic studies have revealed something astounding. The mushroom genus that produces psilocybin first evolved around 65 million years ago. That's right after the asteroid impact that wiped out the dinosaurs. In that dark, decaying world, fungi absolutely thrived. But that raises a really cool evolutionary question, doesn't it? Why would a fungus go to all the trouble of developing a complex molecule that has such a profound effect on the brains of animals?
It definitely didn't evolve for our benefit.
Well, the leading theory is called the gastropod hypothesis, and it offers a pretty surprising answer. See, after the dinosaurs were gone, the world saw an explosion of slugs and snails, all of which love to eat mushrooms. Now, psilocybin is a powerful serotonin analog. Slugs don't have complex brains, but they do have serotonin receptors. The theory is that psilocybin evolved not to expand consciousness, but to mess with a slug's appetite, basically acting as a chemical get off my lawn sign.
So even though psilocybin didn't evolve for us, our relationship with it is ancient. We see it in 8,000-year-old rock art and in Mesoamerican codices showing sacred rituals. There's even the controversial stoned ape theory, which suggests that consuming these mushrooms actually kickstarted the evolution of human consciousness and language. Now, it's a debated idea for sure, but it really speaks to our deep, almost primal connection to these fungi.
And this deep history brings us full circle, right back to today, where the story of psilocybin is entering what might be its most exciting chapter yet. As this psychedelic renaissance really picks up steam, places like Jamaica are becoming key players. Why? Because psilocybin was never actually made illegal there. That puts the country in a unique position to become a hub for research, for clinical trials, and for wellness tourism, with a growing demand for things like mushroom retreats.
And here's what's really cool. We're now learning that we have only scratched the surface. Recent genetic studies show psilocybin evolved independently multiple times, and the genes for it have even jumped between different species of fungi. What that means is there's this huge, untapped biodiversity out there. The versions of psilocybin we're studying now might not even be the most effective ones that nature has to offer.
So we end right where we began, on a new frontier. After a 50-year detour in the scientific wilderness, we are finally starting to explore this ancient molecule again. The comeback is happening as we speak, and it leaves us with one profound question. What other secrets are these fungi just waiting to share with us?